Picture-in-Picture Studio, or also known as PIP Studio, is a very popular product for our Casablanca video editors. This program allows you to place one image on top of another and adjust its size, shape, border, or shadow, or even give it a custom motion path. PIP Studio does work in the Transitions menu, and to support it you do need to be running version 1.8 or above, or any of the Smart Edit versions. To install PIP Studio, simply left-click on Install Product. When this menu opens up, then you'll insert your All Software Smart Card or your All Software CD and allow it to read. And then alphabetically in the listing here, you'll scroll down until you find PIP Studio and then click on Activate. A keypad will come up asking you for your 12-digit code that you might have obtained from your local dealer or from MacroSystem. Enter in your 12-digit code and hit OK, and your PIP Studio will become active and then available in your Transitions menu. Before we go over to Transitions, we're going to go ahead and set up some scenes for use here in Picture-in-Picture Studio. So down in the scene bin here, we have a couple of wedding shots that we're going to reference to put up on the storyboard. And it's important for the placement of the scenes on the storyboard and how it transcribes over into use in the Picture-in-Picture Studio program. So the first thing we need to do is set up what is our background scene, or the scene that will have your PIPs placed on top of it. That's going to be this first shot here we have of the bride and the bridesmaid getting prepared for photos. I'm just going to trim this scene using our trim button down to an exact amount of 4 seconds. And then add this scene to the storyboard. The next shot in the scene bin here is also trimmed to that same length. This is just a person signing the guest book. We're going to put this up as a picture-in-picture on top of this bride shot. So we need to add this shot behind. So the shot when you use PIP Studio, the shot that's first in the series is what becomes your background scene. The second shot is what becomes your foreground or picture-in-picture sized scene. Now we're going to go over to the main menu, or use your hotkey to come over to Transitions. Once you open up Transitions, alphabetically in the list here, again select PIP Studio and add your transitional effect to the storyboard. The first thing we need to do, of course, is change your timer. Remember in Transitions that we always default to 1 second. So if we wanted this picture-in-picture to last the whole length or make the two scenes merge completely onto one another, we do need to set this time. If we left it alone right now, what would happen is we'd see 3 seconds of the bride shot, cut 1 second of the picture-in-picture effect, cut back out to the remaining 3 seconds of the guest book. So to make them merge, we're going to make sure that we set this for the maximum length of the shortest scene. In this case, 4 seconds is our shortest scene. Now we can left-click on the Launch PIP Studio. Here you're going to see what's last defaulted that you loaded in with Picture-in-Picture if you hadn't been using it before. What we see is we're going to break down some of these menus for you. Down in the lower corner is the main PIP menu. The first thing we have, of course, is the preview effect. This is just going to give you a compressed preview of the current effect the Picture-in-Picture has and your background scene. The Archive button allows you to load or save or delete any customizable settings that you put into this picture-in-picture effect that you might want to use on other PIPs in other projects or other parts of the storyboard. This little hot button down here allows you to pop up the version of Picture-in-Picture Studio and the development. And then the little hotkey down in the corner, this little 2 squares with the FX, is your button to exit out of PIP Studio. Normally, if you were to right-click, as I'm right-clicking right now on the screen, you would back yourself out of a program. This hotkey is the option that we have to actually get out of the program, so you don't have to worry about fumbling out or right-clicking yourself out of here. Let's talk about the middle section here. This is actually affecting the picture-in-picture that you're currently working with. First is shape. Here we have a different list of types of shapes that we can work with. You can use a square, maybe star shapes, diamond shapes, heart, elliptic, circle, rectangle. I'm going to go ahead and leave this set to rectangle. You can see we have 2 buttons here for position and size. So if I left-click on position, this allows you to use your trackball to grab and left-click and drop down your position of this picture-in-picture. The size button says what kind of size do you want for this picture-in-picture, and maybe I want to squeeze this down a little more to fit it a little more down in the screen so we're not cutting up into the underscan areas of your video. We also have the choice here to add a border around your picture-in-picture. When you left click on border, you have a choice of size and blur. Setting your size to 0, of course, will make it have no border. And activating the slider and increasing it in real time gives you a preview of what the border size or thickness would look like. I'm going to go for a real thin border here, around 4. And you can actually blur the edge of this border if you wanted to, so I'm going to increase the blur a little bit. And obviously if we increase the border size here, we'd see more of a blur than we would with a very thin border edge. We also have the choice of color, so you can left click on color. And this is the color wheel from the Smart Edit 4 version. So if you want to reference the Smart Edit 4 training video to see how this color wheel works, you may want to do that. But basically here we have a spectrum of colors to choose from, and you just left click and remove the slider here to choose a spectrum of color. And then within this spectrum, you allow these 2 points to meet to create the color that you wish to use. An alpha slider is available to make it slightly transparent. Taking it all the way down to 0 would mean you have no color in the border. Taking it up at 50% would mean you see halfway through the color, or 100% would make it solid. I'm going to leave it set to 100% and hit OK. Now we can see we have a purplish border around this picture-in-picture. We can always use these arrows. These are commonly used buttons in the Casablanca editing software to move the menu up or down, or this little box within a box is a minimize tool. Left clicking on this little button down here, these little black bars indicate the main PIP menu. The last option here in this section is called Shadow. When you left click on Shadow, you can see we already have a default shadow casting off of this picture-in-picture, but it's basically giving you a virtual light source from a direction based on this button here. So if I want to have the light source coming from the upper left corner, I can switch here, and now we can see the lights pretending to come off the PIP and cast the shadow off in this direction. You can add distance to how far the shadow is going to cast off of the PIP. You can left click to set your slider. Do you wish to have a blur on this shadow or not? If you set it to 0, you'll have no blur on the shadow. If you increase the slider of the blur farther, then you'll see that the shadow starts to blend in with your background scene, making it much softer. We also have a choice of color. What color of the shadow do you want to use? Commonly, black is probably what you'll be using for the most part. So we make these 2 pointers here meet in the darker edge of the color wheel. And you might make it slightly transparent. So I'm going to set my alpha slider here to somewhere around the 60s or 70%. So we have a little bit of see-through here, and I might soften a little more by increasing the blur. You can return back to the PIP Studio menu with this hotkey here. And then we have this little grouping over here as the last choice to work with. First, we have the PIP function of working with a single PIP. You can see that when I switch to double 1, we're now going to see the background scene become a new picture-in-picture on the screen. And here we'll open up the background menu. So if you want the 2 scenes on the storyboard to both be a picture-in-picture, when you use them without using the scene layering button inside PIP Studio, you must use a still background scene as the scene behind the 2 picture-in-pictures. In this case, when I click on background, this opens up your all too familiar image pool menu, where you can choose your product type or choose your type of image that you want to use. So in this case, I might come down here to Split X Wedding as a reference, and we can see that there's some different background imagery here for wedding videos. And I might choose this book with the cross here and use these PIPs to place on top of it. Basically, the double 1 and the double 2 reference which picture-in-picture you're working with. In this case, double 1, when I click on position or size, I'm actually talking about the first scene on the storyboard, or the background scene. If I switch to double 2, I'm now referencing, when I move this PIP around, the second scene on the storyboard. So I can take each one of these and position them and maybe come back to the double one and adjust its shape and its information, as well as its border and shadow. So you can do different stuff to each one of these picture-in-pictures. If you want to switch it back so you're working with only one picture-in-picture, which is what I recommend, and use your scene layering button so you can do multiple images in your background instead of have a still, here's where we're going to do this. We're going to work with one picture-in-picture and apply an effect to it. Here's this effect button down below to say, how do you want this picture-in-picture to come on the screen and off the screen? When I left-click on Effect, here we have the choices to say, how is this picture-in-picture going to come in or onto the screen, and how is it going to come off or out on the screen? Right now our in is set for a fade, and this is how long the fade will last, approximately 1 second. The out will just have a quicker fade out for half a second. We can now click on the preview button, and the preview will give you a compressed preview. Don't use it for accuracy, just use it for motion, but it'll give you a compressed preview of what's happening with your picture-in-picture as an effect. If I don't want to use these controls, here we have a different choice of saying, well, maybe we want to have it instead fade out. We want to have it move a direction, or zoom a different direction, or just cut off. The other option down here is called Custom. And this is where you actually get to create your own custom path so that this picture-in-picture can move along a 2D motion to come on or off the screen. I'm going to set up to have the out point have its own custom path. We do need to give it a fade time or it's going to happen very quickly. So under fade time, I'm going to set this to around 2.5 seconds, which means this is going to have a fade in for 1 second and only a brief pause time before the out effect occurs. On the in, I might even give it a new in effect. Instead of using fade, I might just actually have this move to the right. And right now we can hit preview to see what's happening. There it moves to the right, and then the custom path has not been set, so it's still doing a fade as a default.